In this video, we are going to talk about interest rate quotation. Interest rate quotation is one of the most confusing topics in finance. There are three different interest rate quotations. First is the stated interest rate. Second, annual percentage rate, or APR. Third, effective annual rate, or EAR. Now, what are their differences? First, stated interest rate is the interest rate per period. A period is not necessarily a year. For example, the example on slide number 16, 15, and 16, on these two slides, I showed an example. The bank makes one interest payment per 6 months. 6 months period is semi-annual period. Now, the 6 months interest rate in that example is 5%. Now, the 5% is the interest paid over one period, which is 6 months. So this is a stated interest rate. So in other words, stated interest rate is the interest rate paid per period. A period can be a week, can be a month, can be a quarter, can be half a year. It also can be a year. Now the second, APR. APR is the format that is required by law. APR, annual percentage rate, is the rate expressed as using annual term. So that is the rate for a year. Now, back to the example here, we know the stated rate is 5% per half year. So this is a stated rate. Now, what is the APR? By law, by definition, the APR is the number of periods per year times the stated rate. Now, in this example, we have two 6 month periods, two semi-annual periods in a year. So the first number is 2. And then in each 6 month period, the stated rate is 5%. That means, according to the law, the interest rate offered by this bank must be quoted as 10% with semi-annual compounding. Sometimes we can also say the interest rate is 10% compounded semi-annually. Now, either way, first thing that you need to remember is the 10% is APR, because that is required by law. Second, APR is computed by multiplying the stated per period rate by the number of periods. Now, if we look at this quotation, 10% with semi-annual compounding, we know the bank is going to pay two interest payments per year because it's semi-annual compounding. So the interest will be paid twice in a year, and each half-year period previously earned interest is able to compound. So that's the meaning of semi-annual compounding. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it appears that in a year the interest rate is 10%, but with two compounding periods, so we can compute the half-year rate as 5%. So in other words, stated rate is the APR divided by number of compounding periods or number of periods per year. So the difference between stated interest rate and APR is net stated interest rate, is the interest rate for a period which may not be a year. Annual percentage rate is expressed as an annual term by multiplying the per period rate by the number of periods. Now we have the EAR, which is the effective annual rate. Now what is EAR? I'm going to draw a timeline here. Now still I'm going to use the example. The APR is 10% with semi-annual compounding. So that means we have a 1 year period. Now this is period 1, which is 6 months. And then the period 2, which is 12 months. So that is a year. Now the bank is going to pay interest twice. So there is going to be an interest paid at the end of the 6 months, another interest paid at the end of the 12th month. Now, per period rate is 5%, so there is going to be a 5% paid here and 5% paid here. So every 6 months there is going to be a 5%. So adding the two 5% together, we end up with annual APR 10%. But with two compounding periods, so 10% compounded semi-annually. Now, what is the actual amount of interest earned in a year? Is it 10%? Now we can compute. Suppose we put down $1 into this account. Now this $1 is going to earn 5%. The bank is going to pay 5% on the $1 over the 6 months period. So it is easy to see that we can get $1.05 at the end of the 6 months. Now this $1.05 will continue to earn interest. Now remember, we have $1.05, not $1 at the end of the 6 months. So this $1.05 will earn 5%. So we can get money, the ending balance at the end of the year. Now, what is the balance we have at the end of the 12th month? Now it is easy. We have 105. The entire amount is going to earn 5%. So we have 105 times 1 plus 5%. So this is the interest, 1 plus the interest rate. For the second period, we end up with $1.1025. So in other words, we have 10 cents and a quarter of a cent. Now look at these two numbers. The initial investment is $1, and then we end up with $1 10.25 cents. So that means $1 principal and the total interest, which is 10.25 cents, $0.1025. So that is the interest. This interest is earned by investing $1, so it represents 10.25%. Now in this example, now go back to the three quotes. In this example, the stated rate is 5% for 6 months. APR is 10% for a year. But the actual interest rate earned is 10.25 cents. So this is what we call the effective annual rate. Effective annual rate, by definition, is the true interest rate earned as if we can reinvest all the interest and we get the money out at the end. In other words, is the interest rate as if we compound only once. So this is the effective annual rate. Now, what's the difference between EAR and APR? Now, the APR, again, if you still recall the 2-period future value example we did on previous slides, we can easily decompose the total interest, 10.25 cents. Decompose this one. Now, this number, the $1 is the principal of the 10.25 cents. 10 cents, that's the simple interest. The $1 is able to earn 5 cents every period. So this is the simple interest. And then the quarter of a cent is the interest earned by the 5 cents here. So this is the interest on interest. Now, the simple interest, 10 cents, represents 10% of the principal. That is the APR. The total interest, compounded interest, is 10.25 cents. Out of $1, it represents 10.25 cents. So that is the total interest, which is the EAR. So in other words, the difference between APR and EAR is that APR is the annual simple interest rate. EAR is the annual compound interest rate. The EAR considers the effect of compounding, while APR doesn't. However, the law requires all the financial publications, bank documents, newspapers like Wall Street Journal to quote interest rates using APR, using annual simple interest rate. So that is the source of the confusion. What we earn in practice is the compound interest rate, which is EAR, but the law doesn't require the EAR to be reported. Instead, the law requires APR simple interest rate to be reported.